All right, let's start with some breaking inputs that have just come in, where this will be seen as a big blow to the centre. And the Supreme Court in its ruling has said that all parties must disclose the details of the donations they have received through electoral bonds to the Election Commission. Now, the parties also have to furnish the details of their bank account to the Election Commission. The Supreme Court has further said that the details of the donations received by parties till the 15th of May must be given to the Election Commission latest by the 30th of May in a sealed envelope. Now, the court has earlier heard the arguments from the centre and the petitioners. The petitioners moved the courts seeking either a stay on the scheme or some other transparent alternative should be brought in for funding of political parties. Now, the centre has vehemently supported the scheme, saying that the purpose behind it is to eliminate the use of black money in elections, and has asked the court not to interfere with it at this stage and examine whether it has worked or not only after the elections. All right, now for more on this, we are joined in by our political affairs editor, Karthikeya Sharma, who's joining us live from the newsroom. Good morning to you, Karthikeya. Now, this, of course, is an important ruling where the court has now directed the political parties to submit all the amount of money that they've got through these bonds, these election bonds, to the Election Commission by the 30th of May. What more information do we have on this?
See, what has happened is that the court has directed the political parties to submit their accounts till 15th May, of 15th May, by 30th of this month, of the next month, so that all accounts in which election-related fund has been parked through electoral bonds, and the deadline for that is 30th May, and the out time for that electoral funding is 15th May, should be submitted to the Election Commission under a sealed cover. Now, that is the order of the court. Right. Now, the debate is very, very complex here. Now, issue here is that Congress party in its manifesto had said that the electoral bonds are creating a lot of imbalance in democracy. You don't know who is funding which party, and that is why electoral bonds should be done away with. Now, Bharatiya Janata Party had taken a different approach, and the matter is also of ethical nature. Now, Bharatiya Janata Party had argued that electoral bonds were introduced to weed corruption out of the issue, of the system. Now, how do you do that? Now, the argument of the government in the court was that anyway you have black money in the system, you have people funding political parties through cash, so let's do one thing. Let's keep them anonymous. Let us route that money through the banks of India, State Bank of India, let them buy bonds, let them be anonymous, let them get a tax reprieve on it, and let political parties get the money, so the money which is already out as black can get filtered and will become part of the system.
Absolutely.
Now, this is similar to what Chidambaram had done. And on this, BJP had attacked the Congress party. Now, Congress is attacking Bharatiya Janata Party. Now, the issue is right on its head. Chidambaram had argued that the people who have black money or people who have not paid their taxes, if they pay their taxes within 30 days or 40 days, they'll be charged 10% of that amount, and rest they can keep. In next 90 days, if they pay this much of money, or in next 90 days, if they pay that money, they will only be charged 25%, and they can still keep the money. So Chidambaram and other people were charged that you have virtually, legitimize black money of the people who don't pay taxes so that they can keep it. Now, the issue is that both had argued that this is the way to control black money, and both had created different politics. The previous one, which I'm telling you, the argument was that you are legitimizing it. Again, Congress is saying you are legitimizing, but there's one fine difference here. The fine difference is that the world over, people want to know who is funding whom.
Absolutely.
Because it's an election process. Now, that is legitimization of the money you have not paid to the government. So, anyhow, the government directly will come to know who is the payer. Now, in this case, the people are being deprived of their right as to who is funding a political party. And in this case, K.K. Venugopal said that, well, it is not important for everyone to know who is paying whom or who is funding whom, and also the right to privacy after Puttaswamy judgment. Voters do not need to know where the money is coming from. The same party, when Aadhaar was being heard, said that the state has the right to know everything. and the right to privacy is not important. So it's a complicated legal and ethical debate, but my idea is, in this case, it's a good step because the corporatization of elections in India has taken place. And it is really very important to know who is paying for whom.
Absolutely, indeed. It is important to know who's paying to whom, and leaving aside the political and the technical tangle that this issue involves. You know, the quote by Venugopal that you pointed out, that voters do not need to know where the money for political parties is coming in. You know, on the face of it, it sounds bizarre because this was a scheme that was introduced in 2017 by the government as a part of its budget announcements. And they said that one of the key issues that they want to tackle is the use of black money in elections. But contrary to that, what appears to be happening is that this is a scheme which is letting political parties get funding from sources that are completely anonymous. How is this likely to stand the scrutiny in a court of law?
See, I think the court has, we know the drift. Now, the court says that the matter should go to Election Commission. Obviously, since the elections are going, court will also accommodate the primacy of the Election Commission of India. The government of India is working under the directions of EC. You know, we have an executive, we have the Prime Minister, but he cannot take the policy decisions. So we have to understand when election takes place, unless and until there's a war-like situation, an emergency, Election Commission decides what happens. But as I was telling you, this needs to be understood that both the schemes were drive against corruption.
Right.
Both were different but similar at the same time. Both wanted to legitimize the black money parked in accounts or the money on which the tax was not paid, and they wanted to transfer and route that money through the state banks so that the state banks get liquidity, the tax is paid and people can get to keep the money. But the difference is, one was individual in nature.
Right. You
could have kept 30 lakhs, you could have kept 1 crore, you could have kept 5 crores. Issue was between an individual and the government of India that you need to pay this much to legitimize your money. Here the issue is different. Issue is that you are funding a political party who's fighting the election. So you are trying to legitimize the money by routing it through the bank. But the fact is, in elections, it is also important to know whether you are influencing the decision making through a party. It is like an MP.
Absolutely.
Who is also defense producer. And then he goes on to become the part of the Defence Standing Committee of Parliament. That becomes the conflict of interest. And I think that is where the problem is. So that is why I'm saying both were drive against corruption. So they were similar in nature. But the directions they took are different. And in this case, it's a correct decision on part of the Supreme Court.
All right. Karthikeya, do stay on with us. Prashant Bhushan, meanwhile, is addressing the media. Let's listen in.
काटने पड़ेंगे. अब महत्वपूर्ण सवाल ये है कि क्या भाजपा, जिनको करीब करीब सारे इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड मिले हैं 95%, क्या ये इलेक्शन कमीशन को बताएगी कि किन कंपनियों ने ये करीब 2000 करोड़ से ज्यादा के इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड भाजपा को दिए, या ये कहने वाली है कि जी हमको पता नहीं है 2000 करोड़ कोई चिड़िया यहाँ पर इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड हमारे दफ्तर में गिराकर चली गई, हमको तो पता नहीं किसने दिए हैं. तो इसलिए अब भाजपा के ऊपर पूरा दायित्व है, क्योंकि करीब करीब सारे बॉन्ड भाजपा को ही मिले हैं. उनको बताना है ये एक इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड, ये 2000 करोड़ के इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड किन कंपनियों ने उनको दिए, और फिर ये राज खुलेगा कि इन कंपनियों को क्या क्या फायदा भाजपा सरकार से मिला. Today, the Supreme Court has passed an interim order on the electoral bonds, holding that the parties who have received these electoral bonds till now and in future will have to provide complete information about the donors who gave them the electoral bonds to the Election Commission. Therefore, the anonymity of the donor will at least be gone to the Election Commission, unless that party, and in this case almost all the electoral bonds of about 2,000 crores have been received only by one party, that is the BJP, the ruling party, unless the BJP chooses to say that, well, we don't know who gave us these bonds of 2,000 crores, some bird came and dropped these bonds in our office, therefore we can't say who gave these bonds to us. Unless they say that, they will have to disclose who gave them, and therefore this mystery will open up as to who are these companies, what kind of benefits have these companies received at the hands of the BJP government. So it's an important step towards transparency. The second direction is that the government had allowed electoral bonds to continue for 55 days before the election, whereas the maximum period allowed is 50 days. So they have said that you will have to reduce those 5 days.
All right, so that was Prashant Bhushan there, stating that in this interim order, the Supreme Court has in fact directed that the political parties who have received these electoral bond funding should in fact disclose it by the 30th of May. And Karthikeya, if I can come back to you on this, Prashant Bhushan makes a very important point here. He says that these parties who have received money via these electoral bonds would have had some kind of an, quid pro quo to these corporates who would be funding them. And this is where these political parties will have to come clean. And the other significant issue that he raises is that it is the ruling party in power which has received the highest amounts of donations through these electoral bonds.
You see, Mr. Bhushan is making a relevant point. But see, the larger issue here is that the biggest pain or the biggest problem in India when we say about the black money or the money which is unaccounted for is where is it being used. So, we have realized through various studies that the biggest exercise of black money is through elections. Because the way we have designed our elections, it's not like American election where American president can spend roughly to the tune of $1 billion, He can spend $846 million. We have decided in order to create an economic parity or a level playing field, that this is the amount under which the elections will be managed by every individual at assembly or the Lok Sabha level. But it is not followed. And the reason why it is not followed is because it's not feasible. So when it is not feasible, people find loopholes. When people find loopholes, so instead of just spending 25 lakhs, people end up spending 25 crores. So the black money, most of it gets used in funding our elections. And in India, election is it's not happening every 5 years. In India, election happens every 3 months. You have an assembly, a Karnataka election, you have a Gujarat election. So the black money has somehow become part of the mainstream economy. So that is the big problem. And it is for these reasons that our drive to curb black money has failed. The UPA took out that scheme whereby, as I mentioned when Chidambaram was the finance minister, you declare the money, keep a part of it, give it to the government. So, it becomes legit. Here, what the government was saying, okay, we don't want to know, you don't want to be known. So, okay, you go to the bank, buy the bond, pay the tax on it, and then you get your little IT certificate from that, and your money becomes part of the system. But the difference here is, election is different from individual declaration of income, and election is about public trust, and public trust requires transparency when it comes to funding of political agents.
Absolutely, and that I think is the key word here, transparency, and it remains to be seen as to what extent the political parties in India will in fact accept to disclose their political funding. Thank you very much indeed, Karthikeya Sharma, for joining.